Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I think we're about ready to go here. I think we have a good number of participants joining us already, so thank you for that. Welcome to IUCN's webinar today on the World Heritage Outlook number 3, the update for 2020. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you for your interest and taking the time to be with us for the webinar today. We will run 2 sessions of the webinar, one this morning, Central European time, and then one later this afternoon. And we've done that so that we can engage as many people across the globe as we can in the webinar series. My name is Peter Shady. I'm the director of IUCN's World Heritage Program, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. I'm an Australian with over 40 years experience in conservation and a long history of involvement in World Heritage. And as an Australian, I was, as an aside, very pleased to see the news this morning for our Australian friends and colleagues that there's been some rain in Fraser Island, and hopefully the serious wildfires down there will see some relief. I've had this long history of involvement in World Heritage, working now for IUCN for a number of years, but I'm very proud to say that I started very much on the ground as a park ranger, as a site manager. And I'm very proud of that. And I think it's still one of the best jobs in the world, I have to say. In these COVID times, I'm coming to you from the small Swiss village of Sancergues in Switzerland, up behind Lake Geneva. Where it snowed last night. I've done my best to dress my apartment here for the occasion, complete with the IUCN flag. I hope you can see behind me. And I think if there's a positive to come out of this terrible pandemic, it's that today's virtual platforms allow us to really connect to much bigger audiences. So we're delighted to see so many joining us from all corners of the world. Thank you. And welcome wherever you're dialing in from. World Heritage is an idea that's been embraced by almost every nation. The 252 natural and mixed World Heritage sites which have been assessed in the IUCN World Heritage Outlook 3 represent a kaleidoscope of nature. From the dramatic volcanoes of Kamchatka to the sprawling delta of the Sundarban to the secret caves of Phongna Kabang, the majesty of Kilimanjaro, the otherworldly landscapes of Socotra, the idyllic rock islands of the Southern Lagoon in Palau, to the lost worlds of Chiribikete, to the towering redwoods of California, and to the vast oceanic wonders of the 67 million hectare French Austral lands and seas, which was inscribed in 2019 and is the largest World Heritage property on Earth. And we could go on. It's an endless list of the superlative. But these are places which do more than inspire. They protect some of the world's largest wild places, and they underwrite the natural foundations of we as humanity and the foundations of life that we depend on. WWF in a 2016 study estimated that more than 11 million people living in and near World Heritage sites depend on them for food, water, medicine, and jobs. But of course, they bring benefits well beyond their boundaries and their buffer zones. Work by IUCN and others on World Heritage benefits shows this clearly. World Heritage sites provide significant carbon storage and sequestration, soil stabilization, water supplies, disaster risk buffering, and widespread tourism benefits. So we're delighted today that we have assembled a fantastic array of speakers and panelists with a great depth of experience in World Heritage. And we look forward to a lively and very interactive discussion. I hope that we can hear from you in the audience, and that we can filter some of your questions as we hear the results from the latest assessment back to our panel for responses. World Heritage Outlook is IUCN's flagship knowledge product on the world's natural World Heritage sites. It has been made possible through a massive effort across IUCN's networks and the long-term financial support of the MAVA Foundation, who have been our partner for a long time in this endeavor, and I'll say more about that later. It's a very simple idea. It seeks to answer the question, how are the world's most precious places doing? Today, we'll try to answer that question, discuss the challenges and opportunities, and what we can do going forward. So my job is not to talk too much, to keep us on time and to step us through the program, to feed questions from you as our audience to our panel. So I'll stop talking here. I want to just cover a few housekeeping issues. The platform we're using has the audio as silent for attendees, but we are looking forward to your engagement and questions. So please ask your questions to the panelists in the Q&A box, which you should see on your dashboards as participants. That said, please feel free to use the chat box to send us greetings, to engage in side conversations and so forth. But anything that you wish to direct to the panel, please put that through the Q&A box. We're recording this webinar, and we'll be aiming to post the webinar online afterwards. So hopefully that gives us further outreach and the opportunity for those who can't join us today to link in after the event. And do please bear with us as we use these newfound virtual platforms. I guess we're all becoming much more used to these technologies as we sit in lockdown. But we hope for a smooth ride, and let's hope that we don't hear probably the most quoted words in 2020, which is, sorry, I'm on mute. Hopefully we have a smooth running. We're going to start proceedings by delving into the results from this third update of IUCN's World Heritage, with a short video followed by a more detailed presentation. So I'm going to pause here and ask if my colleagues who are working behind the scenes can run the video for us. Thanks very much. Thank you. Thanks very much for that video, which I hope sets the scene for us. I'd like now to pass to Elena Osipova, our Senior Monitoring Officer and World Heritage Outlook Coordinator in the IUCN World Heritage Program. She was the lead author of the report and has driven a lot of the work for us for this assessment. But Elena joined us in 2012, so she's actually survived 3 Outlook updates, which is quite an achievement. Elena holds qualifications in ecology, sustainable resources management, and protected area management. She coordinates our work on climate change, alien invasives, benefits, rights, and communities. So I'll pass now to Elena to run us through this presentation, which will go a little bit deeper into the results. What are we seeing from the assessments in 2020? So thanks very much, Elena.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's great to see so many participants from everywhere in the world. So I'm just going to start with sharing the presentation. So just bear with me for a second, and if I can ask my colleagues maybe to confirm that you can see the slides now.
Yes.
Excellent. So this is just to present you very briefly, well, first of all, what is IUCN World Heritage Outlook, and then talk a bit more about the results for 2020, which I guess is what people are most interested in. So let's just start with what this is all about. So the IUCN World Heritage Outlook is a global assessment of all natural World Heritage sites, an assessment of their potential to preserve the values for which they have been inscribed on the World Heritage List over time. So this is a process that has been developed by IUCN and is undertaken by IUCN. It's something that we launched back in 2014. And importantly, it's an assessment that is undertaken regularly, so every 3 years. And as you can see, we're now presenting you the third edition already, so IUCN World Heritage Outlook 3, which follows two previous reports in 2017 and 2014. You can see the covers of the reports here. So each assessment cycle consists of the reports, which are a synthesis of key results, key trends, and so forth. But importantly, also, each assessment cycle has the wealth of individual site assessments, which I'll just talk a bit more about now. So World Heritage Outlook consists of site assessments, which we call conservation outlook assessments. Those are done for each and every natural and mixed site. So currently we have 252, as Peter mentioned in the beginning. And each assessment is a projection of the potential for a site to preserve its values. So meaning, again, the values for which it has been inscribed on the World Heritage List. So just very briefly, so that you have a bit of an idea of what the assessments are. Each assessment follows a standard methodology that we have developed and consists of three main elements. So assessment of the values of the site, threats to those values, and protection and management, which includes different aspects of those. Each of these elements is then assessed individually, again against standard criteria and against four possible ratings, which you can see here, following from green to red. And then combined together, these three main elements form the conservation outlook. So the key, the overall conservation outlook for a site, which then again follows these four possible ratings from green to red. Now going a bit to how this all works. So these are desk-based assessments, and here it's just very briefly to present you the process that we follow, which again has been developed and is documented. So we have, as a first step, gathering of all existing information. So this includes both official documents, but also consultation with knowledge holders. Importantly, we have been undertaking several steps of consultation with site managers, but also national level management authorities. The assessments are then undertaken by independent experts. So here is where we work very closely with IUCN commissions, particularly WCPA and SSC, and we are very grateful for their support in the process. Each assessment is also peer-reviewed by several other experts. They are also reviewed by site managers who can provide their comments. And we also have established this regional review process, which involves key regional experts so that assessments can be looked at regional scale as well. And then finally, they are approved by the IUCN World Heritage Panel, which is this expert group of a group of experts, internationally recognized experts. So this is the process that we follow. As you can see, for this last cycle, we had a total of more than 700 experts involved in different steps of this process, which is very significant. And we again thank everybody for the inputs. Now to the interesting part, I guess. These are the key results for 2020. So for 252 natural sites, what we have seen overall is that unfortunately the situation is not improving. So in terms of the overall results, we can say that it's still about 2/3 of natural sites that do have positive outlook, but still about a third of them have significant concerns about their outlook or are in fact in critical situations. So we haven't seen any major shifts towards more positive picture for natural world heritage. However, there are some differences which we have observed at regional level, so comparing different regions. In some, as you can see, there have been some improvements in the overall picture. So, for example, in Europe this time, there has been some improvement in a certain number of sites. Now, if we go a bit more, okay. So first of all, you can see here the map, which is taken from the report, but you can also see this overall picture on the website, which I'll show you at the end as well. So this is just to give you an idea, and here you see the pins representing all sites, and they are colored according to their conservation outlook. So this gives a nice idea sort of where in the world which trends are. But then if we go to the results a little bit more in detail, so we have here first of all the values, which is kind of this key overall element. And here the interesting part that we saw is that if we break it down to the 4 criteria, and I don't think I need to explain to this audience the 4 criteria that we have for natural sites, we can clearly see that unfortunately the sites inscribed for biodiversity criteria, so 9 and 10, are much more affected. So we see those values under these 2 criteria of high concern or critical many more often than the other 2 criteria, which is quite concerning. And then I guess if we go to threats, which has been also an interesting part of the assessments, which we have been following since 2014. And the interesting thing is that we can now see the trends more and more. And the main trend that we saw is that climate change has been increasing and now has become effectively the greatest threat to natural World Heritage sites, affecting about 2/3 of all natural sites. We also still have invasive alien species and impacts from tourism remaining in the top threats. But we also saw some interesting trends in other threats as well. And then just briefly go into protection and management, which is the third element. Here we see, again, unfortunately, that, and I think that's a trend that we have maybe discovered with a bit of concern, is that if we look at the effectiveness of protection and management, there is quite a bit of room for improvement, even for World Heritage sites. So we see that about half only of natural sites are assessed as being highly or mostly effectively managed. And then what we have also done, we can look at these specific topics which make up the protection and management element, and we can see which ones have been assessed as either highly effective or as of serious concern most often. And here we see a trend which I guess has been becoming quite visible and quite obvious, is that sustainable finance is the one element that is consistently assessed as of concern in many sites. So this is certainly an area which I guess where a lot more will need to be done. However, we also glad to see some positive examples. So we again saw some sites improving, and we are particularly happy to see some sites improving to a good conservation outlook. So one example is Wadi Al Hitan in Egypt, which has improved, and it's particularly interesting to see here that this is also linked to the IUCN Green List process, as the site was also included on the IUCN Green List of protected and conserved areas in recognition of its good management and the positive improvements in recent years. So we can see here this links between the different processes. We also have a very good example from Côte d'Ivoire, Comwe National Park, which has been showing this consistent trend of improvement from critical to significant concern to good with some concerns over the 3 assessment cycles. So it's very good to see this continuous improvement as well in some sites. Finally, I just wanted to show you a bit the website, how it looks. So all this information, all the assessment for each site you can find on the website. You see the URL, and you will also we'll show you at the end, so you can check, and hopefully you have looked at it already. So here's the main page where you can see again this nice map which shows you the pins with different colors. You can click on any of them from the main map, and it will show you the sites on the left. What you can also do is go through the search, and here we have different filters that you can use. So for example, by region, by criteria, by threats, and it will give you the list of sites that correspond to your filter query. And then you can look at individual assessments, and this is how it looks. So here is an example of Windy in Uganda. So this is the page for the site, and you see the gauge. You also see the sort of overall conservation outlook summary, and then you can click on full assessment and you get the whole assessment and all the details there. You also can look at the references showing all the sources of information that were used. And you can also download the assessment as a PDF for your use. So this is it from me in terms of the overall results. Again, here's the website. Please go and check it. And maybe again, just to use this opportunity to thank everybody involved in the process, all the experts involved in the assessment, site managers, and just everybody who provided comments, inputs, and again, especially Mother Foundation and for their ongoing support from the very beginning in the process. So that's it from me, and I'm looking very much to the discussion and all the questions that you might have on the results and on everything. Thanks.
So thank you, Elena. I think it's back to me if Zoom is behaving. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for the presentation, and I hope that's given people a flavour of both the depth of material and the underpinnings of these assessments, but also the headline results. You know, we have good news and bad news, I guess we can say. You know, the good news is 2/3 of these sites have a positive outlook, but we have a number of sites in serious trouble. We have a really concerning threat envelope, if I can put it that way. A mounting degree of pressure on these sites. And I just want to stress again that what Elena presented and what's in our report is very much a synthesis. It's very much a high level set of main messages that we're seeing from these assessments, and it's underpinned by this incredible wealth of data and assessment material which you can find online. And again, to echo Elena's thanks to everyone for the work involved, I think you'll get a sense of exactly what is involved in doing this. And if any of you out there as site assessors will know what's involved in just doing one site assessment analysis and update. So we have 252 of those. So thanks, Elena. We're very fortunate to have a number of extremely knowledgeable and influential World Heritage players joining us today. And I'd like now to pass to each of these folk to say a few words from their perspective about what we're seeing with the World Heritage Outlook results. So I'd like to pass first to Dr. Kathy McKinnon, who will be known to many on this call. Kathy's joining us from just outside of Cambridge in the UK. I don't know, Kathy, if you've had any snow this morning in the UK. Kathy's a zoologist by training, having gained her PhD at Oxford University. She's been the chair of the IUCN World Commission on Protected Areas since 2015. She's an IUCN councillor, and she's a member of many boards and advisory committees, which if I listed, it would take me another 20 minutes or so. I first met Kathy when she served as the World Bank's lead biodiversity specialist a position she held for 16 years. Kathy's the author of over 100 scientific books and publications, and as I said, well known, I think, to all of us for her passion and commitment to protected and conserved areas. And she is and continues to be an avid supporter of World Heritage. So pass to you. Thank you, Kathy.
So good morning from a very cold, wet and miserable UK. I really want to welcome this report. WCPA has a long and special relationship with World Heritage. We're proud to have contributed to this report, but also to the evaluation of sites and monitoring and capacity building. World Heritage sites are the jewels in the crown, some of the most important and spectacular protected areas in the world. So this report, which is built on an enormous amount of data and collaboration, is important not just for telling us what is happening at those special World Heritage sites, but as an indicator of what is happening to protected areas more generally. And it's very concerning that threats are increasing globally. The three main threats that have been outlined are climate change, invasive alien species, and tourism. It's very concerning that 30% of sites are of significant concern and 7% are critical. We are indeed in a biodiversity crisis, and this should be a wake-up call to the world. Climate change is a particular concern, and of course it exacerbates other problems like the spread of invasive alien species. 83 of the natural World Heritage sites, that's 1/3, are suffering from the impacts of climate change, with marine sites suffering from ocean warming and acidification and severe degradation of corals, as in the Great Barrier Reef of Australia. The Cape Floral Kingdom is suffering from increased spread of invasive alien species, and more severe climatic events, storms and hurricanes, and wildfires are sweeping through important sites such as the Pantanal in Brazil and, as Peter said, Fraser Island in Australia. This year should have been a good year for biodiversity. You should be reporting on achievements in regards to IHE Target 11, and we should be setting more ambitious targets for biodiversity conservation going forward. Instead, we've suffered from the impacts of the COVID pandemic. Like many other commissions, WCPA has set up a special task force on COVID and protected areas. We've been assessing the regional impacts of the pandemic on protected areas. The report mentions that tourism can be a threat to protected areas from over-visitation. This year, we've been worried by lack of tourism and the impact that is having on financial revenues and budgets of protected areas. But there are also other impacts. Some ecosystems are benefiting from reduced visitor impact, but mostly the impacts have been negative. In some protected areas, there's more poaching, budgets have restricted operations, and where there are field activities, they've been severely limited. We will be assessing all of this for protected areas globally and bringing out a special edition of Parks in early January next year. So I hope everyone will read that. One of the few benefits of the pandemic has been a greater appreciation of nature and the health benefits and respite that nature can give us, especially during the pandemic. It's very encouraging that politicians and other policymakers at the highest levels, including the UN General Secretary, are stressing that healthy natural ecosystems are essential to underpin human health, welfare, and well-being. Hopefully, these words will translate into effective action with more support for protected areas, including World Heritage sites, as we move forward to build back better as part of green economic stimulus packages. IUCN, through the new Director General, has an ambition to push countries to allocate at least 10% of their billions of investment packages to go to nature conservation. We really need to stress how protected and conserved areas, including World Heritage Sites, can be part of a better, greener economic recovery. WCPA has long been promoting the multiple values of protected areas, providing reliable supplies of clean water and food security, reducing disaster risk, and helping to mitigate climate change. But to fully deliver these services, protected areas need to be well protected and well managed. WCPA has a core mandate to build capacity, to include helping countries to build back better and investing in more effective management, good governance, and training materials. What is especially relevant to World Heritage Sites, where the front line are the rangers, as shown in the video, are the delivery of training activities to develop better competences and a new initiative through the Universal Ranger Support Alliance to train rangers and improve their welfare. This emphasis on rangers and their welfare is particularly meaningful today, given the sad news of a terrorist attack in Park W in Niger, which has led to the deaths of rangers. Hopefully, with increased capacity and better financial support as we move forward, the next global outlook will give us a more optimistic picture. Again, I want to congratulate the team who've pulled this together and say how proud WCPA is to have been part of this endeavor. Many thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kathy, for those kind words, and thank you so much for the unbelievable support that we draw from WCPA, but all commissions. We definitely draw most heavily, I think, on WCPA and SSC. And put simply, we couldn't undertake this work or any of our work, in fact, on World Heritage, our statutory advisory body work, without the amazing support of the Commission. So thank you for that. That prompts me now to pass, if I may, to Dr. John Paul Rodriguez, who's joining us from Caracas in Venezuela. Hi, John Paul. I want to just also acknowledge in passing to you the incredible input that we've had from the IUCN Species Survival Commission, our largest network, again, who we rely on heavily in our work in World Heritage. John Paul has a PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology, among several other qualifications. He has had links with IUCN going back to the early 90s, working with the Conservation Breeding Specialist Group, as it's called now, and with National Red Lists. And JP served as SSC Deputy Chair between 2009 and 2016. So pass to you, John Paul, for a few words as well. Thank you.
Hello, hello, good morning from here, from Caracas. Can you hear me well?
You're good. I think we can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much. It's a real pleasure to be able to join you at this meeting. As you said, these webinars have now opened the door to much wider participation in many of these events. So many of you, those of you attending this webinar, probably already know this, but I'll say anyway. IUCN is a unique organization. It brings together governments and civil society into a forum guided by scientific evidence to drive conservation action. Now, at the World Conservation Congress, one can find the delegation of a large country, dozens of people perhaps, sitting next to a small indigenous peoples organization representative. And the really fantastic thing to me in this forum is that their voices and their impact on decision-making are comparable. So these very disparate representatives have a similar influence on the work of IUCN. And there's nothing like this anywhere in the world in terms of conservation organizations. And the really fantastic thing of the World Heritage Program of IUCN is that it brings together all of these different participants, all these different stakeholders on behalf of the most remarkable sites on Earth. Really fantastic. Now, prior to becoming chair of the IUCN Species Survival Commission, I asked the experts of the commission, we have about 10,000 experts in 174 countries, what they wanted from SSC. Unanimously, they said that they understood the role in generating the information that feeds into the IUCN World List of Threatened Species, that they were familiar with assessments and reassessments, and that they planned to continue contributing knowledge to this effort. But they wanted to be remembered for saving species, not listing species. This led us to create the species conservation cycle, which is a process that integrates all of the work that we do at SSC, and it has 3 stages: assess, plan, and act. After you conclude an action, you go back to assessment. So it's a cycle: assess, plan, act. So for example, all the knowledge available on the status of a species is used, is summarized, all the knowledge available is summarized on a species assessment. Then this information is used to inform the development of an action plan, and this in turn is used to drive conservation action. When I was scanning the 3rd edition of the IUCN World Heritage Outlook, I found many similarities between the approach followed here and the work of SSC. The status of threats are highlighted by the assessment of conservation outlook. Key actions are identified, and governments and other stakeholders are encouraged to take action. Strengthening the engagement of the SSC network with governments, how we work together with governments, it's a key priority for us. Most of the conservation action globally occurs at the level of countries and even at smaller geographic scales. So I believe this is a major strength of World Heritage, that it follows a global knowledge standard to guide local conservation action. As mentioned in the report, conservation works, and there's no doubt in my mind about that. And the fact that there are many stories of conservation success illustrates that we know how to do conservation. But much more money is spent on destroying nature than on conserving it around the world. And many of our experts have been actively involved in developing the information and contributing to the designation and monitoring of sites. We look forward to continuing to contribute to shifting this balance so that much more attention focuses on saving nature in the years to come. Many thanks.
Thank you, JP, for those words. Certainly, you know, Outlook emphasizes the role of World Heritage in protecting large intact ecosystems and critical habitats for many of the world's most threatened species. 2 of the criteria speak to exactly that. So these are vital last refuges to safeguard diversity, and we're seeing that diversity and biodiversity under threat, not faring as well as other types of World Heritage sites. I really like your assess, plan, act cycle. I think we could borrow that for our work going forward from the Outlook assessments. That's really an excellent, simple idea. Thank you. Let me pass now to UNESCO, to Dr. Mechthild Roschler, who probably needs a little introduction in the world of World Heritage. Mechthild is the director of the UNESCO World Heritage Center in Paris and has been on the front lines of World Heritage since the early 90s. I did make the mistake of suggesting Mechthild has been on the front lines since the beginning of the convention in 1972, and she drew me to account that I was adding 20 years to her, so I apologize, Mechthild. Mechthild is a geographer. She has expertise both across natural and cultural heritage. She holds a degree in cultural geography from Freiburg University and a PhD from the University of Hamburg. And she has published widely in World Heritage spheres and co-authored 13 books and more than 100 articles. So she's joining us from Paris. And if we can pass now to Mechthild, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Peter, and good morning from Paris, dear colleagues, dear friends. I'm very happy to participate in this webinar on Outlook, a knowledge product from IUCN, which really draws on multiple sources and contributes to our collective World Heritage conservation efforts. Outlook does not provide new data, but assembled data from more than 700 contributors, including WCPA and SSC, with a synthetic forward-looking assessment. They tell us how are these special World Heritage places doing. Therefore, this can also contribute to global awareness raising, especially as it collects opinions from different experts. And I think the conservation of World Heritage Site is our joint responsibility. We have different processes under the 1972 World Heritage Convention, especially the reactive monitoring and its institutional processes with states party reports, World Heritage Center advisory bodies assessments, and that is also from IUCN, ICOMOS, and ICROM, including state of conservation reports, reactive monitoring, and also advisory mission reports and presentations to the committee and decisions by that body, all of which is documented in the online state of conservation system, which is on our web pages and which compiles this statutory information. In addition, we have a 6-year cycle of periodic reporting, which reports on specific sites under Section 2 by the states parties and site managers. And this year we will, that means next year in 2021, we will report on the Arab region and Africa to the next World Heritage Committee. Now, Outlook is a complementary tool to support our collective efforts for better protection of World Heritage. We need all the tools we can get, especially as the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted some processes, including monitoring missions on the ground. Our last World Heritage Review looked specifically at COVID-19 impacts and changes at sites and heritage interpretation, including new technologies. While no ordinary World Heritage Committee session has taken place, we continuously consider conservation issues for these sites, which come in from different sources, and we will address these ahead of the 44th session of the committee in 21. Now, the increasing number of threats facing natural World Heritage properties is really alarming. In addition, we have the issue of climate change, which was pointed out especially by Elena this morning, which affects, we can now clearly observe, including through the growing number of serious fire events in 2019 and 2020 at many World Heritage sites. Pantanal, Australian bushfires, now Fraser Island. I'm happy to hear from Peter that there was some rain. This was also pointed out, the climate change issue was pointed out by UNESCO's Director General when she communicated on Outlook 3 to social media and at her intervention at UNESCO's Executive Board, which is currently going on. We are also very glad that we work together with IUCN on the World Heritage and Climate Change policy, because we need both the data from the sites and the policy development, which we will present to the next World Heritage Committee session. In addition, I would like to highlight, and that's an issue since the establishment of the convention, here we have the most important sites on Earth, and they have management issues. How is this possible? How is it conceivable that such places do not have an effective management system and a proper management plan? The generations to come have a right to enjoy these places and benefit from them as we do. Therefore, for us, among the priority actions is to alert and to address these issues together with the authorities concerned, the focal points, and the site managers. Now, Peter asked me also about my thoughts for the future. Among my thoughts on next steps for the Outlook would be to have feedback from them, meaning the site managers. I could also imagine that we could get stronger in the future on nature-culture interactions, as the World Heritage Convention covers both, and we could make best use of this unique feature under this legal instrument. Today, I participate in this event as director of UNESCO's World Heritage Center, and as I strongly believe that each and every one of us has a role to play. Outlook is a very useful initiative of IUCN, in addition to their role as an advisory body under the World Heritage Convention, and we will highlight this again in the IUCN column at our next World Heritage Review, coming out soon on the topic of biodiversity, and in view of the big events hopefully coming up in 2021. Many thanks for your attention, and my colleague Guy will be later at the panel.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mechthild, for those words, and thank you for joining us. I know you've got a busy schedule at the moment, and we'll need to slip away, and we look forward to having Guy Debonnet join us later as a panelist. But just to reinforce, as you know, we highly value our long and very fruitful partnership with UNESCO, not only as an advisory body, one of the 3 advisory bodies, but across all of our work on World Heritage, which we share the same aspirations for. So thank you again. Finally, it's my pleasure to pass to Dr. Jane Smart. Jane is IUCN's Global Director of the Biodiversity Conservation Group and Director of the Global Species Program. Jane has qualifications in botany, zoology, and ecology. She's a former chief executive of Plant Life International, an organization she founded in 1989. As head of IUCN's Biodiversity Conservation Group, Jane oversees IUCN's work across species conservation, protected areas, and World Heritage, as well as invasive species and traffic, the Wildlife Trade Monitoring Network. So thank you, Jane. I pass to you for some words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Good day to all colleagues, and let me start by thanking everybody for this fantastic piece of work. Thanks to the team, and thanks to all those colleagues in the network as well. I would just like to say a few words about the World Heritage Convention and the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, as we now enter what is to be seen as the new super year of 2021, no longer 2020, of course, and Kathy pointed that out. It is IUCN's view that this post-2020 framework must be a framework for all, not just the CBD, but for all the biodiversity-related conventions, and that, of course, includes the World Heritage Convention. We believe that the World Heritage Convention has an absolutely unique role to play to address the joint and linked crises of biodiversity, climate, and now we certainly must add health to that. So it's ideally positioned to contribute to that framework. And let's remember the Sustainable Development Goals here. If you like, the World Heritage Agenda has its own special Sustainable Development Goal, 11.4, which is a call to strengthen efforts to protect and safeguard the world's cultural and natural heritage. And that will be a very strong card to play when we talk about the development of this post-2020 framework. So I really call on everyone to remind their influential decision makers that they work with of that Sustainable Development Goal. And let's just think a little bit more about culture. Mechthild mentioned culture. You know, natural World Heritage sites are kind of really special, we know that, but they actually, I think, shape humanity's collective sense of identity. It's not only about biodiversity conservation, I'm sorry, but it's about land and language and knowledge and culture. So IUCN is going to be working very closely with the World Heritage Center to ensure that by 2030, biodiversity is acknowledged as an essential part of this identity, together with culture and heritage through the contribution of this convention to the implementation of the post-2020 framework. And that will actually mean at the national level to ensure that the national biodiversity strategies and action plans reflect specific World Heritage content, which actually mirrors the global targets. Just a few words, if I may, on the green list, and this has already been mentioned by Elena. You know, the green list, as many of you know, certifies sites that are well managed and well governed. I wanted to let you all know that we really are joining our dots internally in IUCN and making better links between the World Heritage Outlook and the IUCN Green List. So you all know what the World Heritage Outlook report tells us. Only about half are effectively managed and protected. This is not good enough, you know, for those places considered to be the most precious for nature on Earth. These sites deserve a business class of management, if I can put it like that. And we've really got to focus on that. So eventually, we do believe in IUCN that all natural World Heritage sites should be green listed to quality assure their protection and management. We have started that journey to ensure that. And jointly with the Centre, we really want to ensure that by 2030, 80% of natural and mixed World Heritage sites have a positive conservation outlook from the point of view of both the World Heritage Outlook and the IUCN Green List of Protected Areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jane. Great words. I think important messages concerning the opportunity we have to use World Heritage in an intelligent way to shape the post-2020 agenda for life on Earth, and to drive the kind of behavioral and transformational change that we need to see from all levels of society. So thank you for that. With this third iteration of World Heritage Outlook, we've been building partnerships and working to see traction at site level. We've had a lot of mention of this already, and it's excellent to see so many site managers joining us today. Welcome to you. We'd like now to share with you some short videos speaking to how World Heritage Outlook is helping to make a difference on the ground. So I'll pass to my colleagues to share those videos with us. Thank you.
Les 6 départements mondiaux, de par les outils qu'ils utilisent, sont des modèles pour les autres aires protégées de Côte d'Ivoire. Toutes les activités économiques de l'Afrique sont basées sur les ressources naturelles, les ressources en eau, les forêts. Donc la conservation de la biodiversité est très importante. Maintenant, quand vous voyez également les sites qui sont classés 6 départements mondiaux, et quand vous voyez leur valeur universelle exceptionnelle, vous voyez que c'est les critères qui sont définis, c'est en général les sites qui sont en très bon état de conservation. L'horizon du patrimoine décrit certes les performances, les réussites, mais il décrit aussi les défauts. Parce qu'il faut le dire que la gestion des sites du patrimoine mondial, ce n'est pas un fleuve tranquille. Si l'horizon du patrimoine n'existait pas, nous n'allons pas avoir les expériences des autres pays. Alors que quand on voit ce qui est produit à travers tout le monde, ça nous donne des idées et surtout d'anticiper sur les problèmes émergents qui arrivent pour mieux gérer ces espaces-là. Notre rôle de génération présente, c'est de mettre à leur disposition des sites qui sont en bon état de conservation. Et de sorte que les générations futures qui arrivent puissent utiliser les meilleures pratiques pour à leur tour pouvoir transmettre cela à d'autres générations. Donc véritablement, je pense que ces échanges-là, avec la contribution de l'IUCN, ça nous permet d'avoir un système de gestion performant.
Wadi al-Hitan Nature Site is famous by the fossilized whales and gives a whole story about evolution of whales. It's characteristic by more than 1,000 fossilized whale in only 200 square kilometers. And the only place that can give you an open air museum for this evolution line. One of the assessments in the Outlook is caring about the relationship between the stakeholders and the site. And one of them is the local community. We are doing well when we start to collaboration with the local community. People get happy when they found someone take care about what they are doing. My message for all people, for the site managers, read carefully the Outlook. It can give you the gaps, and you can know that if you are in the right track or not, and give you a good tracking tool for what you are doing.
World Heritage sites are sites that are critical, particularly for natural sites, because of the uniqueness of their ecosystems and the wildlife within those ecosystems. All protected areas are important. World Heritage Sites are particularly important. And if we look at World Heritage Sites and the solutions to their conservation, that'll help us understand what we need to do elsewhere. Because if we can't save World Heritage Sites, what can we save? The IUCN World Heritage Outlook is an objective, not political evaluation of the status of the natural World Heritage Sites, what is working, what is not working, what needs to be done. It's very much about the science. It's very important to have IUCN in this role as a sort of neutral, objective arbiter of this evaluation. We learn a lot from the World Heritage Outlook, and it helps us in our work in the countries we work in, but also we provide scientific and technical input into the World Heritage Outlook.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for those videos. I hope they give you a sense of the sorts of partnerships that we're looking to develop on the ground. And really, I think it's important to stress for us that IUCN's World Heritage Outlook is a means to an end. And, you know, it's not, I think somebody mentioned earlier, John Paul, we don't want to just be listing sites. And I heard an earlier comment from Achim Steiner that we shouldn't be the librarians of extinction. So it's really this idea of moving from assessment to action that I think's embodied in some of those short videos. And it's very nice. The last video from Sue Lieberman from WCS, who is one of our formal Outlook partners. So that brings us to the interesting, exciting, slightly less structured part of our webinar program, where we really want to hear from you out there connected to us. I think there were around 250 people listening in this morning, which is great. Many site managers, which is excellent. We're going to turn to a panel discussion, and we'd really like to hear your questions and put those questions to the panel. So to do that, you need to feed those through the Q&A box on the dashboard rather than raising your hand. I hope you can not hear all those beepings. Sorry, my other system. So I'd like now to open up the discussion to our panel, and I'd like to just briefly introduce who's going to be on that panel. We've agreed to avoid set pieces from our panelists in favor of a more open discussion and inviting all of you to submit those questions. So please do that. Joining us on our panel, we have Kathy McKinnon, Chair of WCPA, who we have met earlier. Guy Debonnet is the Chief of UNESCO's World Heritage Natural Heritage Unit based in Paris, and a very close colleague of ours and a very knowledgeable practitioner on natural world heritage. Elena Osipova is going to rejoin us on the panel as the lead author of the Outlook report. We're very pleased to have John Zulu as the site manager of Mosi-oa-Tunya, Victoria Falls, World Heritage Property on the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe. So John brings us that perspective and an additional perspective from a site which is a transnational site, and all of the challenges and opportunities that brings. We're also pleased to have joining us Sheikh Khalifa Ahmed Al Khalifa, the Director of Antiquities and Museums in Bahrain. Khalifa is a member of the Bahraini delegation, a sitting member of the World Heritage Committee. So these are the folks that are going to join us, and these are the folks that are going to look to field your questions. Now, I need to do this either through the Q&A box, which will bring up and pose some of these questions, but maybe just to get us going and before we jump to those questions, I'd really like maybe to ask you, John Zulu, as someone, you know, right at the coalface. As a site manager, you've now seen the 3 Outlook assessments for Mosi-oa-Tunya since 2014. What would you say at that level is the greatest value of the Outlook assessment, and why? Why is that so? If we could ask you to respond, and then we'll sort of see what questions pop up to us in the Q&A. Thanks, John.
Thank you so much, Peter, for having me. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be on this and to share with you page and experience benefits that we'll be able to have through this process of monitoring OUVs at the Musotunya Victoria Falls World Heritage Site. As Peter earlier on alluded to, the Musotunya Victoria Falls World Heritage Site is a transboundary property which is managed between the state parties of Zambia and Zimbabwe. And so we do everything collectively. And for the process itself, it has enhanced our deep understanding of the OUV, but rather also critical natural elements of the property, because it actually pushes you much further, not only to look at the OUV, but also to understand these natural elements that are embedded in the property. It has also created a platform between the two state parties to develop a sustainable conservation mechanism in managing identified threats. And these we have been able to do them collectively because it's one and the same property. It has improved as well our management of our OUV by effectively monitoring natural value, by engaging relevant stakeholders, more especially local communities that are living around the property. I need to emphasize that the local community have played a very critical role in aiding our management of managing these OUVs. But also, being a transboundary property, it has actually strengthened our bionational relations because it has there's this issue of us understanding and communicating effectively, being on the same level, and also there has to be a kind of strike or compromise that you don't leave anyone behind, and everything has to be done collectively. So this is what this process has been able to do. On a personal basis, the monitoring process has built my capacity as a site manager in effectively managing this natural property, especially of such a magnitude. It has enabled me to do a lot of research, a lot of reading, things that you don't literally consider to be important. You now look at them to be very critical and to be part and parcel of the whole entire value system of the site. It has also enabled me to understand IUCN monitoring process, which I'm very grateful of. I think as site managers, this is what I would like to encourage everyone, that we not only look at our site, but we need to broaden our management perspective to understand the entire system, World Heritage System, which also includes monitoring processes such as that of IUCN. And so I'm really grateful for that, because it has really deepened my understanding on how to really manage this property effectively. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. Thanks so much, John. It's great to really get that perspective right from the ground, and very, very reassuring. I'm going to turn to one of the questions that's come through the Q&A. It's a good question, I think, and it speaks to the overall mix, I think, between the success stories that we're seeing through the Outlook assessments and, the obvious concerns that are there. And I might ask you, Kathy, if you might respond to this one first, but I'll invite any panelists to jump in on this. The question, it says, acknowledging the specificity of each World Heritage Site, how do you think lessons learned out of success stories documented in the Outlook can be used to support those sites which are in the red?
Thanks, Peter. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we're good. Thanks, Kath. Sorry for the question without notice. This is the exciting part of Zoom platforms. Huh?
No, I think it's an excellent question, and I think it's already been partly addressed in the video clip from Côte d'Ivoire. But perhaps we should be looking more closely at lessons learned. What is helping countries Why are some sites effective and others not? I suspect an awful lot of the same answers come up: good financial support, good political support, good and effective management and governance. And I think this is where tools like the Green List Standard, the management effectiveness tracking tools, IMET, which is being rolled out through the BioPalma program, all come into force. But I would encourage you through the World Heritage Program to encourage protected area managers from sites where you do have good outcomes to be writing up those stories and putting them on the Panorama website as inspiring solutions for how we go forward. So that's just a few ideas. I would also like to seize my opportunity now to invite all managers of World Heritage Sites to become members of WCPA. And even if they don't want to do that, it's very simple. Please do use all the materials that are freely available on the website, all of the guidelines and capacity development materials. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Thank you very much for that. Maybe I think this is a good question to maybe pose to other panelists as well. I think this question of how do we scale up from the success stories? How do we get more Comoé National Park stories in Côte d'Ivoire, where we shifted the needle, from the red into the green in 3 cycles. We saw one of those examples in these 3 assessments, and we need to be seeing hundreds of these examples. So maybe if I could put a similar type of question to Guy Debonnet, who tracks year in and year out what's happening across the portfolio of sites. Do you have thoughts on that, Guy?
Thank you, Peter, and good morning to everybody. Well, I think we have to see, of course, that there is a very big variety of reasons why sites are on the threat. And some of these reasons are linked to external reasons, not directly influential by the site management. Climate change being one, but we have also a lot of sites that are under threat because of conflict. While other things are really influential and can be addressed directly by the site management. And I think the case of Comoé is a good example, where the site went on the danger list basically because of the impacts from conflict, the civil conflict in Côte d'Ivoire at the time. Once that issue was addressed, I think it was a combination of very strong political will from the government, a strong management authority that had the will to address these issues, and broad support from donors to address these issues. And I think really, if we look at the World Heritage List across the board, I think that is what we really need. We need strong commitment at the political level from first of all, of course, from the state parties where these countries where these sites are situated, but also from the world community as a whole. I think the whole philosophy of the World Heritage Convention is a philosophy of international solidarity. So it should not be left to the state parties that have these sites on their territory to address these issues on their own. And I think one of the big weak points of the World Heritage Convention is probably the fact that it doesn't have really a dedicated financial instrument. Of course, we have the World Heritage Fund, but it's clear that as a financial instrument to support the management of the sites is completely insufficient. And so I think that is something that if we want to really address these issues, we see as a result from the outlook that sustainable financing is a big issue for a lot of the management of World Heritage sites, and that needs to be addressed. And I think there are some initiatives out there. We have the Legacy Landscape Fund that is being piloted by Germany, where some other organizations are also taking part. So I think this is really one of the important things to address is one, the political commitment at national level, but also the international commitment to take care of this common heritage for the whole world.
Thanks, Guy. Maybe just quickly to flip that question also to Elena Osipova, because I know, Elena, you've been working on translating the Outlook results through a methodology into action on the ground. Any quick comments you want to make to that? And then we'll turn back to some fantastic questions that are coming through from participants. So quickly to...
Yeah, thanks. In fact, yeah, so what we have been trying to work on with some site managers and some states parties, particularly France, is to try and develop approaches to using the results of Outlook to identify priorities for action. So basically having a discussion with all key stakeholders, site managers, but also other relevant local stakeholders, and together using the results of the Outlook and based on that, see what are the key actions that need to be done, but also importantly, how they can be done collectively again, and how we can then together have this action plan for a site, which has been, I think, very, very interesting so far and very successful. So that's something I think should be promoting to use in other sites and try in other places as well.
Thanks, Elena. There's a number of good questions coming through on the regional aspects of World Heritage Outlook and what we're seeing. I think it's Kay Van Dam has asked, do you feel that translation of outputs from World Heritage Outlook assessments or a very short summary into regional languages would be a good idea? For example, for Socotra Archipelago, it may reach the local decision makers and site managers more if the assessment or a summary could also be available in Arabic. But I just want to also flip this to Sheikh Khalifa, who's joined us, because I think there is this dimension around how do we work at a regional scale, and the Outlook assessments, Khalifa, are showing quite a lot of variation between the regions. If you look at the results globally and then you drill down to what's happening regionally, you see quite a different picture in terms of a different suite of threats. You see a different picture in terms of protection and management challenges. So Sheikh Khalifa, could you maybe respond to how we might regionalize what we're seeing here?
Yes, thank you, Peter. And just to pitch off that thought of yours, as you have rightly said, I think looking at these results on a regional level do provide opportunities for certain stakeholders to contribute into transforming the results into action, as you've previously mentioned. If you look at, for example, some of the threats present in Africa and Asia, hunting and so forth, might not be as threat in the region, Arab region, and other regions as well. I think the strength of World Heritage lies within the strength networks that take place, whether through IUCN or UNESCO's field offices, or even the Category 2 centers that are, in all regions of the world, some geographically, others thematically. I think their role would be to really pinpoint some of the challenges on the region level. And I think their existing extensive network within that region would enable them to translate those findings, not just in the literal terms to another language, but in terms of their policies and programming as well, that will enable those state parties to engage further with addressing some of the challenges. And if I might just comment on that as well, Peter, I think as well, some of the results that I see in terms of the role of site managers, and I think it's important to ensure and to convey to them through all mediums on all regions as well, that they're a pivotal role in this whole process. And if you look at the current threats, I think some of the threats can be tackled on a site level, which can have a contribution through local communities or site managers. But I think what is alarming is that through this Outlook assessment, a lot of the potential threats in the future are mostly policy-related threats to be addressed, whether it's climate change, whether it's mining, whether it's water management. So I do fear that in the future, if these findings of the outlooks are not addressed properly, that we might be in a position where site managers or local authorities might have a limited role to play in terms of fulfilling the requirements of meeting conservation goals. So I think on a regional level, I think it's something that's worth looking into to empower those local communities and local managers.
Thank you, Sheikh Khalifa. maybe there's a whole lot of questions coming through, but perhaps just to flip back to you, John Zulu, at site level. I think what's been triggered by that comment, Sheikh Khalifa, on, you know, how do we address some of these threats which are seemingly beyond the power at site level. You mentioned climate change, and you know, if you look at the Outlook assessment, nearly every category of threat that we've been assessing has increased through the three assessments. I think one of the other interesting findings that we're seeing is that even where we have world-class management of these sites, we're still losing the battle in some ways. We still see sites under threat. You know, we've seen reef sites under threat from climate change, but all sorts of other ecosystems as well. So I just wondered, John, if you feel some frustration at site level in terms of, you know, some of these impacts, some of these threats that are maybe outside of your control, and thinking through, you know, how could we mobilize more effectively around whether it's policy, whether it's awareness, advocacy, you know, what's the suite of tools that we need to think about. So, John, if you're still with us. I'm not seeing John come up. Maybe we've lost you, John. Let me invite, maybe let me pass back to you, Guy, on that point, because I think, you know, you're sitting in a place where you're seeing, like we are, this threat envelope placing more and more pressure on sites. And, you know, the decision makers for some of these threats are not the people that are charged with protection. How do we get beyond that problem of powerlessness?
Well, I think we can say that the World Heritage Sites are kind of an indicator, right? They are a subset of the global protected area system. They are the one that should have the most political clout because of their status, but even there, we see that half of them are threatened or poorly managed. And I think that really brings us back to this biodiversity super year and the need for the world to really make transformative changes, as is the buzzword today, to turn around the issue of biodiversity loss. And the World Heritage Convention plays its role in trying to protect these sites, but of course it has to be seen in a much larger framework, and that's where the global biodiversity framework and the fact that we need to adopt at the highest political levels internationally much more ambitious targets. And we need not just to adopt the ambitious targets, because that we've done before, but we also need to make the political changes that are necessary to turn around the situation. Because as it was mentioned by Sue Lieberman, if we can't save the World Heritage Sites, then what can we save? So in that sense, I think the sites are a good indicator of the problem that we are facing. And of course, a lot of things can also be done at the site level. And even in issues like climate change, of course, which is something that needs to be addressed at the global level. But still, we can work to increase the resilience of our sites. We can try to diminish other threats to the sites, which will help them to survive the climate change wave that is already happening today.
Yeah, thanks, Guy. There was a good question from Diane Tart on that, I think, from Australia, on, you know, how sites can really better understand their vulnerability to climate change. And, you know, this kind of, you know, yes, there's a driving cause to this which needs concerted global action, but there are things that can be done at site level. And we've been working with colleagues on things like climate vulnerability indexes, understanding how habitats might shift, understanding how systems might need to adapt, and equipping site managers to do that more effectively. So there's a lot of good questions coming through here. I just, there's a question from Coleman O'Craden, who's one of our Outlook partners, on tourism. He says, with tourism pressure being, and I'll alert one of our panelists first to this so you're ready to maybe respond. And I guess perhaps Kathy, I might point this one back to you if I can, as it relates to tourism impacts, the impacts of COVID that we're seeing. So Coleman says, with tourism pressure being cited as a threat, in addition to the indirect threat of tourists arriving by air and thus contributing to climate change, is the business model of tourism revenue as an incentive to protect sites and a source of finance still sustainable?
Oh, what
question.
well, thank you. It's a very relevant question. I think tourism revenues have been a great source of income, not just for protected areas, but for local communities. And what we're seeing now with the pandemic is the fact that tourism has pretty much dried up is having a real impact, particularly on those communities. There's been a big study done by people from our Tourism and Protected Areas group for the EU, particularly on the impact of tourism for protected areas in Africa. And I think it's showing that this is a very serious fall in income for those protected areas and those communities. So I think that tourism actually will, hopefully when it recovers, will still be a source of financing for protected areas. But we really need to look much more closely at where we're getting more other modalities for sustainable financing. And this has been a critical issue for a long time. Guy has mentioned it. We keep coming back to it. Really, our big opportunity, I think, is the pandemic gives us the opportunity for emphasizing the role that protected areas can play in building back better, and that governments and donors should see investments in protected areas and World Heritage sites, not just as an investment in biodiversity conservation and interesting wildlife, but as really a serious contribution to other aspects, including addressing climate change issues, but also addressing economic recovery. I think it's very encouraging, for instance, that Pakistan has just decided to invest substantially in expanding its national parks network, developing new parks, both as not just for biodiversity conservation, but as a response to climate change and a response to giving employment opportunities for people who've lost their work during the pandemic in neighboring cities. And I think these are the kind of models we need to see going forward. And as I said earlier, the DG of IUCN has an ambition to talk with donors and others to really try and promote this idea of a substantial allocation of economic recovery funds going towards conservation of nature. And we must take advantage of that. Also tying together the synergies between biodiversity and climate change responses. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks very much. We're getting close to time here, but there's a question from Francesco Banderin, who many of you will know that I might close on because it's slightly controversial. So let's close on a challenging question that asks some questions of us. Francesco, thank you. He says, let me maybe again put this one to you, Sheikh Khalifa, as a sitting member of the World Heritage Committee. Francesco asks, have you been able to assess the impact of the Outlook on the World Heritage Committee decisions? Have you measured the gaps between the evaluations provided in the Outlook and the decisions taken by the committee on the state of conservation of sites? So an interesting question, and let me put that to you, Khalifa.
Thank you, Peter. I think we all agree that this tool, the Outlook assessment, is a critical aid for each
committee member in terms of taking the right decisions with regards to trends in state of conservation. We, at least in our delegation, use it very extensively. And I think the way it has been laid out clearly indicates certain trends that need to be addressed urgently. But I think as well, some of the positive sort of summaries that come up from this outlook is to put an emphasis on recently inscribed site on the World Heritage List and where do they stand. As you know, the operational guidelines of the convention state that a site to be inscribed need to have appropriate conservation and management measures in place in addition to protection. We have seen in the past certain sites inscribed on the World Heritage List with some challenges with regards to management. And I think that has been evident in some of the sites, as you saw in the report. Some of them did not, if I may say, measure as a good state of conservation, which is also an indication that a site is imposed with a greater challenge of managing these conservation challenging that could be addressed prior to listing. And I think that's worth noting as well, and for future decisions taken by the committee. And I think that assessment provides an overall image of where do these sites stand. And I think that might be particularly of interest as well to, and again, you have said the word controversial, I think, in terms of mixed sites as well, where in many cases mixed sites are inscribed and the values on the nature criteria or the cultural criteria do vary in terms of importance, and how that impacts as well the management of the site when those values aren't clear or aren't visual enough for the site managers of the state party itself. So a lot of the contentious topics associated with World Heritage listing do take place in this question and in this discussion. And I do think that these tools do enable committee members to really look into I wouldn't call it consequences, that's a harsh word, but some of the elements that need to be taken into account with a premature inscription.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you everyone, friends and colleagues. We're running short of time, so I think we will need to close. I want to thank all our speakers, presenters, panelists, and video stars. Thank you very much. I want to thank those of you who've joined out there in Zoom land for your interest and questions. We had too many questions to respond to, so I apologize if we didn't get to yours. We will certainly endeavor to keep a record of those questions, and as always, we're open to follow up on any of these if we didn't get to yours. So thank you for that. The invitation is always there to reach out to us. I want to close by sincerely thanking all of the hundreds of experts who mobilized behind this exercise. Site assessors, peer reviewers, site managers, states parties, regional review groups, the IUCN panel, designers, web developers, without whom none of this happens. Special thanks to the extraordinary IUCN World Heritage Program team who've worked around the clock to pull 252 assessments together in this report and to update all of the assessments online. I've seen the times when the emails are coming in, so I know how hard everyone has been working and how much in need of a rest our team is. Thanks also to our IUCN communications team who've generated more than 1,100 media articles and an impressive level of TV, radio, and online coverage. Every time we release an update of World Heritage Outlook, we generate similar levels of public interest as the IUCN Red List, which is very gratifying. I want to give a special thank you to you, Elena, for your work in coordinating not only this round of Outlook, but previous rounds, and your work as the lead author on the report. Elena deserves a medal for this, but what she really wants is a very long rest, I think. But thank you very much, Elena. I want to again express our sincere gratitude to the Marva Foundation, who have shown great faith in this work, investing in its promise through more than 10 years. Without Marva, we would not be here. So thank you for their support. IUCN's World Heritage Outlook distinguishes itself as a one-point-in-time health check on natural world heritage, the most stunning and important nature on this planet. It's forward-focused and proactive, proudly independent and evidence-based. Its power is in communicating the plight and prospects of the world's most treasured places and in catalyzing good decisions and improved conservation outcomes for natural world heritage. Let's together move the needle for world heritage. So please continue to get involved, support us, and ensure that Outlook really is that means to an end. The better protection of the places that we all cherish, the natural glue that sustains us. Please do explore the website, and thank you again to everyone for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Thank you very much.